Being kicked out of your own family home hits different, like the world quietly deciding you're obsolete. I'm Bruno Taylor, 60, 9 years old, a widower. 8 months since I buried my wife, Martha, the love of my life, the heartbeat of 4 decades. What happened next would have broken her heart all over again. It started quietly, the way betrayal often does. My son's wife, Amber, had been circling me for weeks, polite smiles that never touched her eyes, compliments wrapped in thinly veiled irritation. Then, one cold Thursday morning, it happened. My belongings, decades of memories, tools, letters, photos, were thrown out onto the front lawn like yesterday's garbage. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering as they watched Martha's cedar recipe box lying in the grass, cracked open, her handwriting exposed to the wind like a wound. Amber stood in the doorway, holding her phone, documenting the scene as if my humiliation were a lifestyle vlog. "It's time for new energy," she said, voice sweet but sharp. "You're holding us back, Bruno." But Amber had made one catastrophic mistake, the kind that doesn't just ruin reputations, it ruins lives. She never read the fine print on that $85,000 business loan bearing my forged signature. 52 hours later, I walked back through that same door, not as the defeated old man she'd humiliated, but as the primary borrower and the man holding every shred of evidence to prove she'd committed bank fraud. And this time, I wasn't walking in with grief. I was walking in with power. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Have you ever been dismissed because of your age? Because tonight, I'll show you how a retired postal worker's filing habits became the most expensive lesson my daughter-in-law ever learned. Because disrespecting grief has consequences. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs earlier. But grief makes you blind, makes you desperate to believe that kindness still exists. Martha died on Valentine's Day, February 14th. The irony wasn't lost on me, 40 years of love, and she leaves on the very day we first said I love you. For weeks I drifted through an empty house, surrounded by echoes of her laughter and the faint smell of her lavender perfume that clung to the curtains. Then, one evening, my son Scott called. "Dad," he said gently, "you can't stay in that big house alone. Come live with Amber and me. We've got plenty of room." I thought it was compassion. Turns out it was opportunity. Scott and Amber had been hunting for a house for 2 years, good credit, decent jobs, but no down payment. In Mesa County, homes were skyrocketing, $400,000 minimum. They needed 80 grand down to avoid PMI. I had $340,000 from selling the house Martha and I built with our bare hands. Every nail, every board, every heartbeat laid in those walls. But I thought, he's my only son. Martha would have wanted this. So on March 15, 2023, I wrote the check. $340,000 down on a colonial at 1247 Maple Street. I even put Scott's name on the deed. "It'll help build his credit, Dad," he said. And I wanted to believe him. The first crack appeared 3 weeks later. I was in the kitchen making Martha's pot roast, her recipe card trembling in my old hands. That cedar box, one of the few treasures I'd brought from our home, sat open beside me. Amber walked in, perfectly manicured fingers tapping against her phone. Bruno, you need to move on, she said, wrinkling her nose. This whole dead wife shrine thing is weird. I froze, spatula in hand. Amber, I'm just making dinner. She laughed lightly, no warmth in it. You're living in the past. It's depressing. Scott agrees. That one hurt. But I swallowed it. You keep peace for your children, even if it costs you dignity. The second time was worse. Memorial Day weekend, I was in the garage, sorting my old postal tools, 30 years of service, every wrench labeled, every drawer numbered. Amber burst in mid-recording, her phone already rolling. "Hey, Lifeglow family," she chirped. "So we have a little situation. Some people just can't respect boundaries when you're building an empire." She turned the camera on me. "This is my father-in-law. He's struggling with grief and doesn't understand I need quiet space for my business. I was just holding Martha's photo. Not speaking, not moving. Amber," I said quietly. I wasn't making noise. "The problem isn't noise, Bruno." She smiled. "It's energy, negative energy. My followers can sense that." That night, I saw the video online. Boundary issues. Grief is not an excuse. 2,847 views. 93 comments. Most agreed with her. That's when I understood. Amber wasn't insensitive. She was strategic. Every emotion, every tear, every sigh was content. But I didn't fight back. Not yet. I began to document. Every word, every slight, every expense. I bought a small Sony recorder, $47 at Best Buy. Fit right in my shirt pocket. I carried it everywhere because Martha always said, "Brun, keep your receipts." And she was right. People lie, but paperwork doesn't. By July, my finances were bleeding. My teacher's pension and Social Security totaled just over $3,900. After rent, Amber's family contribution, and therapy, medication, and living costs, I had barely $400 left each month. Then one morning, as she set up her ring light at the dining room table, Amber said casually, "Bruno, we need to talk about your financial contribution. I thought we agreed on $800. I said." She smiled like a predator. "That was before I calculated the emotional labor." Emotional labor. "It's exhausting managing your negativity," she said. $200 starting next month, and you handle your own groceries." She called my grief negativity. That night, as she filmed another motivational clip about toxic energy, I sat quietly at the kitchen table and started investigating her Lifeglow empire. I watched her Zoom calls, listened to her pitch financial freedom to desperate young women, but the math was off. I saw her credit card bills. 6 months, $420 in sales, 40% commission. That's $568 income. But she was spending thousands. New iPhone, camera gear, lighting, inventory piling up in the basement. She was bleeding money. Then, one morning, I found it, the loan papers. They were just sitting there, beside my coffee mug. Mesa Valley Community Bank, $85,000 loan, interest 12%, term 5 years, page 7, highlighted in yellow. Personal guarantee clause. If the business defaults, the bank can seize personal assets, including real estate, including our house at 1247 Maple Street, the house I'd paid for, the house she filmed her content in. And in that moment, the grief inside me turned into something else, something sharper, something patient. Because if there's one thing 30 years in the Postal Service taught me, it's how to handle a paper trail. And Amber had just signed her own eviction notice, and who was listed as the co-signer on that personal guarantee? Bruno Taylor, primary borrower, my name, my signature, notarized, official, legal, and I had no memory of signing it. I sat in that kitchen for 2 full hours, staring at those papers as the morning sun slid across the counter like a slow spotlight on betrayal. I traced my own signature over and over, trying to remember the moment it happened. Then it hit me, Father's Day. Amber had brought me a stack of insurance papers that afternoon. She'd said they were for my protection, to make sure I was covered under their homeowner's policy. I remember the smell of her perfume, the way she smiled, the softness in her voice as she said, "You don't need to read all that, Bruno. It's just routine stuff." And I'd signed. Distracted, grieving, trusting, without realizing it, I had just signed a personal guarantee for $85,000. That meant if Amber's Life Glow empire collapsed and the numbers screamed that it would, I'd be on the hook for every penny. The bank could come after me. They could seize the house, my pension, everything Martha and I built over 40 years. But what Amber didn't realize was that this forged contract didn't just make me vulnerable, it made me powerful. As the primary borrower, I now had rights, legal rights, financial rights, rights that a 30-year Postal Service veteran knew exactly how to weaponize. Then came August 12th, the night everything changed. Amber decided to host her biggest Life Glow opportunity presentation ever. She'd invited 23 people. I know because I counted the folding chairs Scott dragged up from the basement. That morning, as she tested her lighting setup, Amber turned to me. "Brun, you need to make yourself scarce tonight. This is a professional event. 7-figure earners from corporate are flying in from Phoenix. 7-figure earners. From a company that sold overpriced vitamins. Where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Library, McDonald's, anywhere but here." I looked to Scott for support. My son, my boy, who once built tree houses with me in the backyard. He was arranging chairs, eyes down, pretending not to hear. "Son," I said, "this is my home too." Amber stopped, turned slowly, and her voice came out like a whip. "Your home, Bruno, let's be very clear, this isn't your home. You're a guest who's becoming increasingly unwelcome." My chest tightened. "I put the down payment on this house," I reminded her. She smiled without warmth. "That was a gift to your son, not to you." Scott finally spoke, soft and apologetic. "Dad, maybe just go to a movie or something. It's just for tonight. Just for tonight." Like I was an inconvenience. But I had been waiting for this night, preparing for it. "Actually," I said, "I'd like to stay. I'm curious about your business." Her face went white. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because you don't understand the sophistication level. Try me." She looked at Scott again. He shrugged, trapped between loyalty and fear. "Fine," she said finally, "but you sit in the back. You don't talk. You don't ask questions. You're invisible." "Invisible?" But invisible doesn't mean powerless. By 7 o'clock, the living room was packed. 23 people, mostly women in their 20s and 30s, clutching notebooks and iced coffees, eyes full of hope. The air smelled of cheap perfume and candle wax. The seven-figure earner was a slick 28-year-old named Travis, wearing a shiny suit that looked borrowed and confidence that was not. I watched him pull up in a leased BMW, step out like he was walking onto a TED Talk stage. He opened with a practiced grin. Ladies and gentlemen, Life Glow isn't just a product. It's a movement, a chance to achieve generational wealth. Charts, graphs, buzzwords, promises, the math of manipulation. I quietly switched on my Sony digital recorder, hidden in my shirt pocket. Then came the pitch. $10,000 a month in your first year. $50,000 by year 3. All you have to do is share what you love with the people you love. A woman raised her hand. What about startup costs? Great question. Travis beamed. It's just $2,400 for your starter pack. Think about it. A McDonald's franchise costs $500,000. This is practically free money. I looked around the room. These weren't investors. These were single mothers, nurses, teachers, people scraping by. Then Amber took the stage. Her eyes gleamed in the ring light. 6 months ago, I was in a dead-end job, living paycheck to paycheck. Now I'm building a 6-figure business from my living room. Lie number 1. My first month, I earned $1,200. By month 3, $3,000. Last month, $8,000 in profit. Lie number 2. I'd seen her bank statements. Her total income, $568. But then she did it, the fatal mistake. She gestured toward me. Even my father-in-law, who's been struggling with some personal challenges, has felt the positive energy this business brings to our home. Haven't you, Bruno? 23 pairs of eyes turned toward the old man in the corner. I stood up slowly. The room fell silent. Actually, I said quietly, I have some questions about the math. Amber's smile cracked. Questions. You said $8,000 profit last month, but I live here. I see the mail, the credit card statements, the inventory stacked in the basement. I'm curious how you calculate profit when the numbers don't add up. Travis stepped forward nervously. Sir, perhaps we could discuss this after the presentation. I didn't stop. And how does the $85,000 business loan factor into those profits? Amber froze. The color drained from her face. Bruno, you don't understand. I understand math, I said. $85,000 borrowed, 12% interest. That's $850 a month just in interest payments before you even touch the principal. You could hear a pin drop. And when this business fails, I continued, that loan comes due all $85,000 plus accrued interest. Do you know who the bank collects from when the business defaults? Travis started packing up his laptop. Ladies, I think we should. They collect from the personal guarantor's assets. I said, including this house, the one purchased with my wife's $340,000. Amber was trembling with rage. Bruno stopped talking, but it was too late. 3 women stood up, then 5, then 10. Within 2 minutes, 15 of the 23 attendees were gone. The room emptied like air from a punctured balloon. Travis muttered something about rescheduling and bolted. Amber stood frozen among the folding chairs, surrounded by glossy brochures and shattered illusions. "You just cost me $57,600 in potential sign-ups." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, I just saved 23 people from financial ruin." "Scott," she snapped, "are you going to let your father talk to your wife like this?" Scott hesitated, looked at her, then at me, and finally said the words that broke me more than anything she'd done. "Dad, that was really inappropriate." That's when I knew my son was gone. Completely under her spell, but I wasn't finished. "Amber," I said, "calm now. We need to talk about the business loan." She crossed her arms. "What about it?" "I want out. My name off the paperwork." She laughed. "You can't just walk away from a signed contract." "We'll see." The next morning, she was in full panic mode, pacing, calling her upline, blaming me for toxic energy, ruining her growth. I stayed quiet, sorting through my files at the kitchen table. 30 years in the Postal Service teaches you one thing: paperwork is power. Every document has purpose. Every signature has meaning. "Bruno," she said finally, not looking up from her phone, "we need to establish new boundaries." "I'm listening." "First, no more interference with business activities. What you did last night was sabotage." I asked questions. I said flatly, "You embarrassed me in front of industry leaders." "Second, I need the dining room as a dedicated workspace. Off limits, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday." That was our dining room, where Martha and I once had Sunday dinners with our son. "And third," she said, "I need you to sign some paperwork, insurance updates, liability protections, legal stuff." That phrase, "legal stuff," sent a chill down my spine. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. "Nothing complicated, just protecting everyone's interests." I smiled faintly. "I'd like my attorney to review it first." Amber laughed, that dismissive, sugary laugh she used for her followers. "Bruno, you don't have an attorney." "Actually," I said, "I do." That wasn't entirely true, but I had something better: connections. See, 30 years at the Postal Service means you meet people, lawyers, bankers, auditors. You deliver their mail, you do them favors, and they remember. One of those people was Janet Williams, my old route supervisor. She'd left the service years ago to become a loan officer at Mesa Valley Community Bank, the same bank that issued Amber's $85,000 loan. 3 days earlier, I'd called her, just an old colleague catching up. Then I mentioned casually that I might have signed something I didn't understand. Her voice changed instantly. "Bruno, bring it in. Let's take a look." That appointment was today. I went to my small room, Martha's old dresser, her framed photo watching me, and pulled out my filing system, 3 bankers' boxes. Everything labeled, everything chronological. Box 1, house purchase, deed, mortgage, insurance. Box 2, personal finances, pensions, bank statements, medical bills. Box 3, the interesting one, Amber's business. I had everything: her Life Glow application, fake income claims, doctored screenshots, recruiting messages promising guaranteed returns. But one document stood out, something I found in Scott's truck 3 weeks earlier, a promissory note. Amber owed $12,000 to a man named Marcus Henderson, 18% interest, inventory expansion, she'd written. I looked him up, former business partner, former boyfriend, currently married, 2 kids. Amber was borrowing money from her ex to fund a business that was already $85,000 in debt. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just fighting for my house. I was about to bring down her entire empire. The words "there must be some mistake" slipped out of Amber's mouth, trembling, brittle, the last defense of a liar watching her empire collapse. But the silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Officer Martinez stared at Amber, pen frozen mid-sentence. Scott's face had gone pale, as if the blood itself was retreating from what it didn't want to acknowledge. On the phone, Janet's voice came through steady, surgical. "Ma'am, there's no mistake. We've already verified the documents. The handwriting on the signature line doesn't match Mr. Taylor's. The notary was operating with an expired commission, and the loan officer who processed this will be suspended pending investigation." Amber's phone clattered onto the table. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say, no pitch, no rehearsed talking point. Just wide eyes, glassy and wet, darting between me and Scott, searching for someone, anyone, who might still believe her. "Amber," Scott's voice cracked. "What did you do?" She opened her mouth, closed it again, swallowed hard. The influencer mask slipped, all that confidence, that corporate sparkle gone. Now she looked small. Cornered, it was supposed to be temporary, she whispered. "Just to get the inventory started. Travis said once the team grew, we'd be swimming in money. I was going to fix it before you ever found out. Fix it." I repeated quietly, my throat tight with disbelief. "You forged my name on an $85,000 loan, risked my home, my pension, my wife's memory, and you thought you'd just fix it." Amber's hands were shaking now. "You don't understand how hard it is to build something, to be somebody. You had your career, your pension. You had Martha. I have nothing if this fails." "You had my trust," I said, "and that was worth more than any pyramid of lies." The phone on the table buzzed again, Janet's voice cutting through the air. "Officer Martinez, I'm forwarding our preliminary report to the Mesa County District Attorney's Office. They'll likely want to open a formal fraud case. Please advise Mr. Taylor not to sign or move any documents until investigators arrive." "Understood," Martinez said, his tone official now. He closed his notepad, the soft leather snapping shut like a verdict. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand over your phone and any files related to Life Glow. And I'm advising you not to delete or alter anything. That would constitute obstruction." Amber's breathing quickened. She clutched her phone like it was a life raft, but Martinez stepped closer, calm, deliberate, authoritative. She finally set it down, her polished nails trembling against the glass screen. Scott looked shattered. "Amber, tell me you didn't forge Dad's signature." Her silence was the only answer he needed. Something in me cracked then, not anger, not triumph. Just a deep, quiet ache. I'd spent months mourning Martha, but I hadn't realized I was also mourning my son, the boy who used to bring me coffee on Sunday mornings, who once said I was his hero. Now he sat across from me, head in his hands, unable to look either of us in the eye. Officer Martinez stood. "Mr. Taylor, you're within your rights to stay here. Given the ownership documents and the pending investigation, no one can remove you without a court order. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Marcus. He gave a small nod back, his voice softening. You've handled this the right way, Bruno. Paperwork tells the truth. When he left, the air in the room was thick with silence, the kind that feels like it might shatter under its own weight. Amber sat motionless, mascara running, staring at her reflection in the black mirror of her phone. Scott finally stood, his voice barely above a whisper. I need some air, he said, and walked out the back door, leaving it half open. The late afternoon light spilled in through the screen, painting the floor gold. Martha's light, I thought. The same color that used to fill our kitchen at Oak Street when she baked pies on Sunday afternoons. Amber didn't move. Her shoulders shook once, then twice, a soundless sob breaking free. I watched her for a moment, this woman who had stolen so much, yet somehow looked more lost than dangerous now. I gathered the papers back into their folders, each document sliding neatly into place, every label perfectly aligned. Years at the Postal Service teach you order, but grief teaches you patience, and revenge, when earned properly, teaches you silence. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. Amber. I said, the investigation will take weeks, maybe months. You'll have time to think about the kind of person you want to be when this is over. I hope you use it wisely. She didn't respond. I stood, picked up Martha's cedar recipe box from the counter, and carried it back to my room, the one that used to be Scott's. I placed it gently on the dresser beside her framed photo, the scent of old cedar and lemon polish filling the air. Outside, I could hear sirens in the distance. Maybe they were for someone else, maybe not, but I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to, because sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or breaking things. Sometimes it's about sitting perfectly still while the world that wronged you collapses under its own lies. And as the sound of those sirens grew louder, I whispered to the photograph on my dresser, to the woman who'd always said truth has a way of coming home. You were right, Martha, I said softly. It always does. Then I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of justice arriving. The kitchen clock ticked softly, marking the slow crawl of time since everything fell apart. Now we figure out how to rebuild what we can, I said, though the words felt hollow. 3 weeks had passed since the storm began, 3 long, gray weeks, filled with phone calls, police reports, and quiet dinners eaten alone at a table that once hosted laughter. That's when the full scope of Amber's empire came to light. Her empire, if you could call it, that built not on hard work or talent, but deception. The FBI fraud investigation peeled back layer after layer of her illusion, revealing something monstrous beneath the shine. She hadn't just dabbled in lies. She'd built a kingdom of them. 34 people had fallen into her life glow downline, believing her promises of freedom and financial independence. Total losses, $87,400. The average victim lost about $2,517. Numbers that painted a portrait of pain and trust betrayed. But as it turned out, Life Glow was just the beginning. Detective Sarah Morrison's voice on the phone that September morning carried a weight I wasn't prepared for. "Mr. Taylor," she said, Your daughter-in-law wasn't just involved in Life Glow. She was running multiple schemes simultaneously. My heart sank. What kind of schemes? She operated a credit repair business without licensing, charged people $500 up front, then did absolutely nothing. I could hear the scratch of her pen as she read from the report. We've identified 14 victims so far. Total losses around $7,000. I felt sick. What else? An online coaching business, she continued, voice low, professional. She sold life transformation courses for $1,200 each, guaranteed income, guaranteed happiness, guaranteed success. And did anyone actually find success? A pause. Then, we haven't located a single satisfied customer yet. The math hit like a slow, heavy tide. Over $110,000 stolen, taken from single mothers, veterans, teachers, young couples trying to start over, all while she lived under my roof, eating food I'd paid for, surrounded by furniture Martha had picked out with love. But for once, justice didn't drag its feet. On September 15th, the Federal Trade Commission shut Life Glow down entirely. 847 distributors across the country gone. The so-called top earners, the ones who'd flown in to hype Amber's opportunity presentation, were suddenly under federal investigation. Travis, the self-proclaimed millionaire influencer, was found living in his mother's basement, driving a leased BMW he could barely afford. When the FBI raided his storage unit, they found $34,000 in cash. Every dollar traced back to victims like the Hendersons, the Johnsons, people who'd trusted Amber's charm. Her empire collapsed overnight. Instagram suspended her account for fraudulent business practices. Her 847 followers, the ones who worshipped her success, discovered her rented cars, staged homes, borrowed jewelry. Every picture of her glamorous lifestyle became evidence in a federal case, but the most brutal punishment wasn't legal, it was social. On September 18th, Mrs. Patterson stopped by with a casserole in her hands and pity in her eyes. "Bruno," she said softly, "I hate to bring this up, but people are talking. What are they saying?" She hesitated. Some of the neighbors lost money in Amber's schemes. The Hendersons invested $2,400. The Johnsons $1,200. The words cut deep. These weren't faceless victims. They were my neighbors. The same kind people who'd brought meals after Martha died. "Mrs. Patterson, I had no idea." "Oh, we know you didn't," she said kindly, "but some are wondering how much Scott knew. That question haunted me like a shadow." How much had my son known? The answer came 4 days later, September 22nd. Scott showed up with a banker's box in his arms. He looked tired, hollowed out by months of stress. "Dad," he said, "I found these in the basement, hidden behind Amber's inventory." Inside were bank statements, cash deposits totaling $23,000 over 6 months. None of it reported. "Scott," I said slowly, "where did this money come from?" "I think she was skimming cash," he said, voice shaking, "taking payments directly and depositing them into hidden accounts." "Did you know about these accounts?" "I swear I didn't." "But Dad..." He pulled out a small notebook, Amber's handwriting, pages full of calculations, names, victim lists. She was planning to leave, take the money, and disappear. I flipped through the pages, reading words that didn't seem real. Flight searches to Costa Rica. Research about countries without extradition treaties. My daughter-in-law hadn't just been scamming people. She'd been planning to vanish with their money, abandoning my son in the wreckage. Scott, I whispered, I'm sorry. For what? For being right about her. He sank into Martha's old chair, the one I'd saved from the curb after the eviction. Dad, he said, when you first called Janet Williams, when you started digging into that scholarship loan, did you already know? I thought for a long time before answering. No, son, I didn't know the details, but I knew something was off. 30 years in the Postal Service teaches you to spot fraud, the inconsistencies, the confidence masking desperation. You could have told me. Would you have listened? He looked down, then smiled sadly. Probably not. I had to let you see it for yourself. I said softly. If I'd pushed too hard, I might have lost you. That day, the silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was understanding. By September 28th, Amber was formally indicted on 14 federal charges. The trial was set for February 2024. Her court-appointed lawyer said she could face up to 12 years in federal prison. Scott filed for divorce on October 3rd. After that, the house at 1247 Maple Street finally grew quiet again, peaceful. I could make Martha's pot roast without hearing complaints about negative energy. I could display her photo on the mantel without being accused of living in the past. Some neighbors still avoided me. Others waved again. The world was slowly finding its balance. Justice, I realized, isn't loud, it's slow, deliberate, like a river carving its path to the sea. Then came December 15th. 4 months after Amber's eviction, I was in the kitchen, rolling dough for Christmas cookies from Martha's old recipe, when Scott knocked on the front door. Dad, he said, smiling shyly, can we talk? He looked better, healthier. The weight of lies had lifted from him. Come in, son. Want some coffee? He nodded. We sat at the dining table. No ring lights, no staged photos, just father and son, breathing in the quiet. Dad, he said, I want to move back in. I'd been waiting for those words. Scott, I said, this is your home. It's always been your home. He shook his head. Not like before. I want to do it right this time. He opened a folder. Legal documents, rental agreements, clearly defined responsibilities. I need to contribute, to earn my place here, not assume it. I felt something deep in my chest, a pride I hadn't felt in years. That's the man your mother and I raised. I told him. He smiled. My divorce was finalized last week. Amber gets nothing. I keep nothing. We start over. Any regrets? I asked. Only that I let her hurt you. I reached across the table, placed my hand over his. Son, marriage makes you do stupid things. I know. I was married 40 years. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a year. Did you and Mom ever fight about money? Every month for the first 5 years. I said, chuckling. She wanted to save everything. I wanted to spend everything. Eventually, we realized we were fighting for the same thing, security, just different ways of reaching it. Scott signed the lease, $800 monthly rent, shared utilities, clear boundaries. Then he looked up. Dad, there's one more thing. I want to help you organize Mom's recipes. Maybe we could cook some together. Tears welled up, but this time they weren't born of grief. They were gratitude. She'd like that, I said quietly. Dad, yes, Thank you for not giving up on me. I never would, son, but I've learned something too. I'll never sacrifice my dignity for anyone again. That evening, we cooked Martha's pot roast side by side. The scent filled the house, the same house that had seen betrayal, loss, and finally redemption. Because some boundaries protect you from harm, and others protect your ability to love without losing yourself. Both kinds matter. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your dignity?